Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, May 13th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 110 days, the game against Michigan in just 201 days. It's almost here. Can't wait. We're going to be talking about the Ohio State defense today. We talked about the offense on Friday's show. Today we're flipping to the other side of the ball. There's more to be excited about here, and there's some stuff we got to talk about, stuff that may be a little bit up in the air. We're doing that with our buddy Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And when we talk to Ross, we are sponsored by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to make a reservation today. All right, Ross, this is a side of the ball where Ohio State fans have, over the years, at least since 2019, have not felt great about it at times. You go through that 2020 team, and it's like, boy, they could have won the national championship except the defense. 2021 team, boy, they could have won the national championship except the defense. 2022, you're kind of having some of the same conversations. 2023, that defense got pretty good. 2024, boy, everyone's coming back. They might be real good this year. We were talking before the show. There just are not that many questions about the defense this year. But one spot where I think there are some open questions is at linebacker, where Tommy Eichenberg off to the NFL, Steel Chambers off to the NFL. You got Cody Simon back, who has made a bunch of starts over the years. But there are still some open questions, especially at that will linebacker spot. I mean, how is that all going to shake out this year?
Yeah, I would agree that the defense, the 30,000 foot view is that they're in very good shape. I mean, Caleb Downs is a great player. They've got a great secondary. They got a really good defensive line. I think Cody Simon is pretty well positioned. I still think, will linebacker is an important position, particularly for reading, reacting, and making tackles. And I just, I would say that it makes for an interesting discussion regardless, because I would say that CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles are two fan favorites in general going against each other. But, at the moment, what's interesting to me is that, people can say, prior to Lathan Ransom's injury last year, like regardless of what you called Sonny Styles, he was functioning as a Sam linebacker. He was playing at the quote unquote nickel spot, but all that means is like you took a nickel off the field and put him there. That's what you do. That's what an NFL 4-3 team would do, for instance, right? So you have him at will linebacker, but at least in the spring, he was mostly second string while becoming then playing as the Sam linebacker in 3 linebacker sets. So it seems like a circuitous way to get right back to where things were. And it doesn't seem to be sort of maybe people quite picking up on that. I don't know how much they're going to do 3 linebacker sets. I'm sure it depends somewhat on the amount of 12 personnel or 2 tight ends or bigger sets they see. Presumably they'll get that against Iowa, maybe Michigan, so it definitely has to be part of the package. But like, in my opinion, again, Jordan Hancock is certainly one of their best football players. So I would personally want to minimize the amount that he is not on the field. I think that limits their flexibility because he's very good against the run, even being a cornerback size guy. So that makes then, let's say at most they run 3 linebacker packages, 15, 20% of the time, which seems a lot to me, but let's just assume that. That's like, if Sonny Styles isn't playing at will, that would be a lot of snaps he's not playing at all. That said, I mean, again, didn't get to see all the practices except for the spring game. I still think he's probably going to be the answer at will over Hicks, although I wouldn't be surprised if they rotate them in some capacity. I still worry about CJ Hicks. Like, he looks good blitzing, and the coaching staff and others like to focus on that. But to me, the bread and butter of that position is like reading, reacting, being able to adjust and pass coverage. I'm still just not sure he's like a fit for that. And I thought Styles actually looked pretty good doing some of that stuff in the spring game. And so, you can have some packages, obviously, where kind of like a dime look where Styles maybe comes as the Mike, and, you can have some flexibility there, get Jermaine Matthews on the field, who I think like they need to find a role for, because he's just like too good to not play at all. and he obviously reps some at nickel, so you can have a dime where he's the other slot corner essentially. But I guess I would still say like they have as I'm saying, a plethora of defensive backs that are really good, but that will position does need to be solidified, and it'll be interesting to watch. As I said, my guess is it ends up being some type of timeshare, but I think I feel a little bit more confident Styles ending up being the starter there at the moment.
And if you're doing a timeshare there, is that based on what you're expecting? Is that hey, this guy does this better and this guy does that better, and you're doing it based on that? Is that just a pure rotation? How do you think they might do work a timeshare there if that's what they do?
Yeah, I could see it's a little bit of both, right? Like again, like Styles obviously does, my flipping comment aside, like offer you something as in the passing game as having safety experience. So I could see something where they're both on the field in some kind of like nickel packages or passing game packages, but also just basically similar to last year. I think where Cody Simon rotated in with Steel Chambers for much of the year. Like I could also see that where they each play a couple series and then the other guy comes in. And so you sort of keep everyone interested in getting snaps that way as well.
The other thing you mentioned before the show to me was talking about coverages in the secondary. And this is interesting to me because they have such a veteran corner unit and such a veteran safety unit that, there's an argument for kind of the old Iowa method where it's just, you're going to do this. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to do we're going to do this one thing. You're going to know what we're doing, but we're just going to out execute you. And then there's also if you have all these incredible athletes and you can do other stuff, maybe you don't worry about keeping it simple and you get a little more diverse in some of the coverages and you make yourself a little harder to figure out. What do you think they're going to do there? Which path do you think they're going for in year 3 of the Jim Knowles defense?
Yeah, I mean, what I compared it to, is they could be like the Cleveland Browns were last year, who played a ton of man coverage because they had 3 really good corners, good deep safety, and you could do that, right? Like, and I thought maybe they'd go that way, but I actually thought, as as we've discussed previously, like my argument is not for doing that and for diversifying their coverages. And as we've talked about, like last year, they kind of took this like winding path. I think certainly influenced by Lathan Ransom's injury, as we were just talking about with Sonny Styles. Like post Ransom injury, I think they played a lot more sort of like soft cover 4, less like man and cover 2, and but I think they'll mix all of that in. They actually, there were some indications from Jim Knowles that he wasn't like super into match quarters, but then in the spring game, we saw it. And they actually ran it pretty regularly, different types of, cover 4, man match concepts. So where you're defending, I mean, there's different ways to do it. We've talked about, but you have a zone, but you're playing man within that zone. Once the receiver enters it, that zone match or man match, you're like using man principles, but then trading off receivers. So I do think it seems to me like they're going to continue to diversify. Again, I think having Lathan Ransom back and then Caleb Downs, again, allows you to do a lot of that because he's very flexible. So, that's obviously my vote. So my perhaps maybe optimistic or self-interested perspective is that they should keep going down that path and not just rely on their, innate talent, which they could do most of the time. But it's certainly something that I'm going to continue to keep an eye on.
All right. On the last show, I asked you about the concerns on the offense, and are there areas where it's a little unsettled in your mind? On defense, they pretty much have everyone back, and we already talked about the linebackers, and that's kind of the one spot where they did lose a couple of starters. Are there concerns for you? Are there areas where it's like, well, I would like to see a little more from this guy or this position group, or I will allow you to cheat and talk about special teams here instead, if you would prefer.
I'm not going to talk about special teams. I mean, obviously, I expressed like some of my interest in like the will linebacker, some concern, both in terms of how they can fill the role as an actual like read and react linebacker, as well as I guess my overall scheme concern about like being too reliant on a 3 linebacker looks. I would add, now we're really like nitpicking though, right? Like maybe they're a little thin in the safety room. I mean, it would help to get Malik Hartford back, but you're basically down to like one backup. Like, yes, you're freshman, and like Jane Bonsu, McClain, they've got lots of experience this spring. I'm still not sure you'd want to get to that point, but like your starters are really good, right? It could like your worst place to be. Like same at defensive tackle. I feel very good about Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams. You'd probably like to have at least one more that you're willing to like rotate at nose, and ideally two. Tyleik Williams played a lot of snaps last year, so you'd probably like to be able to reduce that amount. So like I think there's still some like depth questions. I think there's interest like what's the defensive end depth going to shake out as? Like who's number 3, who's 4, who's 5. But again, these are certainly what you would consider first world problems when you're worrying about like the amount of backups you have and how good they are. So yeah, I would say certainly like if you're ranking issues, putting aside the punter, we got, there's certainly more question marks on the offense right now, just personnel wise than on defense.
I will remind you, the punter is 6'7" and Australian, so I think you can cross that one off the list. Without ever having seen him kick in person, I feel like that pretty much ticks off all the boxes that I need to feel pretty confident in the punting game this year. But we'll see. We will see how that goes. We will see how the defense and the offense go as well this fall for the Buckeyes. It'll be a really interesting year. It would be a great year to be a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We are running our annual membership sale right now. Get about a 40% discount on the price of an annual membership. $69.99 to get you through the next 12 months of summer camps and recruiting and then media days and then fall camp and then the season and then the first year of the 12-team college football playoff and all the recruiting fun that comes along with all that stuff and all the transfer portal stuff. It is going to be a very busy and very memorable year. We would love to spend that with you at BuckeyeHuddle.com. You also, as a little side benefit, when Ross and I record these shows, we generally record them a little early. You get a little early glimpse at these shows as well. We post these always early on our board to let our members get an early look at all that stuff, as well as some additional stuff with game footage and stuff during the fall on these shows. There's a lot of reasons to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. Also, thanks to our friends at Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. JeffRuby.com/Columbus for menus, reservations, and everything you need today. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.